Hello and welcome to this month's Leaderboards, where we break down the past month's MPDs and break down of what does it all mean for the gaming industry. Now, this last month where Mortal Kombat had a major success, they have proven that they are just pushing to have that flawless victory. Yes, Mortal Kombat came back again, having that #1 spot and keeping it for a second month in a row and really giving it that flawless victory that it had. It was also #1 for last month. It was #1 for all the major consoles, so Switch, Xbox One, and PS4, where into this next month it was just #1 for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, but that was still enough to have it keep that #1 spot. And with their success, they have even pushed themselves to be the #1 best-selling game of 2019 so far. And not on top of that, they had even doubled their sales in the span of the second month than any other Mortal Kombat game they've ever released in its franchise. Now, I think part of it has to do with this Mortal Kombat game did come out near the end of the month of April, and so that gave it all the month of May to really rake in all those extra sales that they did not get in their initial push in probably, I believe it was the last week of April. So that's not a surprise at all whatsoever, but Mortal Kombat taking that #1 spot for 2019 is a great thing for it. And we also have another quite a surprise. So Days Gone had a really rough start in regards to critics really hurting this game. And where it still sits at a very low 70s, and 71 technically Metacritic score, but it seems that a group of voices really have gotten them to tell these journalists that you are wrong. And you can look at it, because if you look at the user score on Metacritic, it's an 81. It's still an 81. And it just proves that there's such a disconnect right now with this game in regards to the critics and the consumers themselves. And because of this, it kept its positioning at #2 for the month of May, which in my predictions, I said I possibly could take it. I did say it was going to go to #4, but I thought it might stay at #2, and it did. And, that's a really another good sign for this game in general and for the long-term factor of this franchise. And it's a good sign that this game might get a sequel. And there's another good sign that this game might get a sequel as well, as this game got itself into the top 10 best-selling games of 2019 so far, going over games that had been multi-platform. So the fact that they got that much sales for this game, and some of the games that I will beat, which we will break down the top 10 best-selling games later on in the show, this is really, really good, and it could give them an opportunity to bring in a sequel for Days Gone. And for a person that enjoyed the game myself and put it near that 81 Metacritic score, user score, compared to, I don't understand the low 70s it's getting on Metacritic. I think this is just another great thing for Days Gone, and there's more to come when we talk about Days Gone coming later in this show. But when I did my prediction show last month, I completely missed a game. I talked about some games that were coming out where I've been like, okay, these are the ones that are going to be on the radar. This is going to get themselves into the top 10 potentially. And there is one franchise I completely missed. And if I noticed it, I would have put it in my top 10 list. And I felt terrible after I noticed this. But, Total War 3 Kingdoms took the #3 spot for this month. And, it's not a surprise because the game has enough name recognition for its franchise. It has a great 85 Metacritic score, and it's in a great positioning to get itself that #3 spot. I don't think a PC-centric game would have gotten itself into the #1 spot, and obviously because of the way that they track the sales, these are all physical sales, and not all digital sales are told to the MPDs. And so therefore, this could have sold more and we just don't know about it, but it makes sense in regards to being strictly to the PC platform and the appeal it has for that PC platform itself. And it's in a good spot, but honestly, I don't see it keeping its positioning. After this month, I think it'll drop out of the top 10, most likely out of the top 20 by next month. But again, great hit for this franchise, especially getting their name out there is a really big thing, especially with these NPD numbers. It really promotes the games that are doing really, really well. Now, some other notables for the top 10 overall. Rage 2 made too big of a hole, I guess, that they were not able to climb themselves out of this hole to get some sales, because this game really got killed by Metacritic. The Metacritic score ranged between the high 60s and the low 70s, but compared to Days Gone, where the difference is the user score is even worse, where some user scores put them in the 50s. And I just honestly do not see, after this very short performance, they really need to be number 1 or number 2 to really show off that this is a franchise that you could come back to and continue to have more games for. And I just don't see it after this. I think Bethesda is going to save bringing this franchise back for quite some time before they decide to, bring back a Rage 3 of any kind. If they do, I'd be extremely surprised by that. And, another underperformer is Sonic Racing. And it was just unfortunate because, it was only able to make the 19th spot. It didn't even make it in the top 10. I know I'm talking about notables in the top 10, but it didn't even make the top 10, which I mentioned if it was not going to make the top 10, then this was not a good showing for Sonic at all whatsoever. And it proved that not only this game was not wanted at all by consumers, that possibly Crash Team Racing caused consumers to decide to hold their wallets to wait till Crash Team Racing came out, when they could spend their $60 on their, not $60, spend their money on that game, because both of them were not $60 if I remember correctly. So it just showed that consumers wanted to hold their money and not spend it on Sonic. They rather spend it on Crash Team Racing. And also Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, got booted out of the top 10. But, not only the top 10, but also got booted out of the top 20, which is not bad for like month number 2. A 2-month run where they had stayed in the top 10. That's really good for a game to have that holdover. And, most games, good games show up in the first 2 months in the top 10 still, and after that they don't stay anymore. You have those rarities of those excellent selling games, which are always going to be your Rockstar games, are always going to be in there. Your Call of Duties are always going to be in the top 10. The rarity, unless there's a lot of good games coming out, they get booted, but then they come back the next month. And on top of that, another 2 games that dropped out of the top 10 that did stay in the top 20 were Yoshi's Crafted World, where it went from the bottom of the top 10 to the bottom of the top 20, which is still not a bad thing for a one system type game. It still shows good signs that Yoshi's Crafted World probably did pretty well in its sales numbers, especially with that smaller base in regards to Switch owners and how many Switches are out there and how many people are willing to buy this game. And the other one that dropped out of the top 10 but also stayed in the top 20 was Division 2, which I think it'll stay in the top 20 for quite some time. And it could even pop itself back into the top 10. It's one of those franchises that I could see that doing that, especially with the DLC that they announced at this past E3 that they're going to support this game with going through the rest of this calendar year and into early 2020. So this game definitely will be hopping between the top 10 and the top 20. Now, MLB The Show, my one that I thought maybe would hang on to that number 3 spot. It did not hold on to number 3, but it did not drop out of the top 10 either. So it was staying consistently 3 months in the top 10, which is really good, especially staying 2 months at number 3 and then staying still in the top 10 for the 3rd month in a row. That's really, really good. And it doesn't hurt its cause. I mean, it dropped 5 spots, but it's not a big deal. Like it has already had its success. Right now, it's just getting the bonus of what it could get sales wise. It has probably made its quota. It was the best-selling game in the franchise, and that is what you want in regards to your sports games. You just want to keep improving them and keep selling them and keep at least making the quota, and then, you have your loftier goals, and I think they probably hit those loftier goals, so which is a good thing. Now, looking at the games at the rest of this year, that's the best-selling game so far for this year, I mentioned that unfortunately the all-powerful Disney with Kingdom Hearts 3 was not able to hold back the flashy Johnny Cage from stealing that number 1 spot from them for Mortal Kombat 11. And, I mean, they stole the number 1 spot from them, and I see them hanging on. I don't see them hanging on to that number 1 spot by the end of the year, but it's definitely a really good win right now for WB and NetherRealm Studios for having this number 1 spot. And could it stay in the top 10 best-selling games for the rest of this year by the end of 2019? I think it could, and I pretty much I think it will. I think it will maybe be. It could probably be around number 6 by the end of the year. I think there's going to be some big games like Call of Duty is always going to get into the number 1 spot around that time frame. There's a lot of games that are coming out right now, especially towards the end of the year, that I'm really curious on how the sales are going to affect it. Potentially Pokemon, because of how good the appeal is right now on the Switch, that could maybe get itself into a top spot in the top 10 best-selling games. But it is tricky because it is 2 different games, so that might also hurt its chances of getting in that top 10 spot. But I see them hanging on to the top 10 in the top 10 for the rest of the year. I don't see them hanging on to number 1. I see some games giving it the good old boot, but that's okay. Staying in the top 10 for the best-selling games of the entire year, that's really, really good. Now, some other really great noticeables is Days Gone was able to ride itself. Wasn't even in the top 10 best-selling games of this year last month, but with its second month staying at that number 2 spot, it was able to get itself to number 8 for the top 10 best-selling games of this year. And I bet with the Days of Play sale that they announced, where Days Gone was at a significant discount in the month of June, I would not be surprised if it could jump a couple higher on the spots for when we go into next month. And I could see it, and we'll talk about it, I could see it staying in the top 10 for the best-selling games of this of the month as well. I could definitely see it going there. And with Days Gone coming in, Jump Force got the boot and got completely kicked out of the top 10. And MLB The Show jumped an extra spot and helped Sekiro, and then got some extra bases and basically kicked Sekiro down a notch. And so Sekiro now is at the bottom of the top 10 best-selling games of this year, followed by number 9 being MLB 19 The Show, and then after that Days Gone got itself in there as well. And which I honestly do not see Sekiro Shadows Die Twice holding on to that spot, but to be able to get itself into the top 10 best-selling games of this year in the first half of the year is quite close. We'll see. Actually, June has not been done yet. We'll see if it's able to make that feat of finishing it off by sticking in all the month of June. Or if you want to consider right before June's 6-month mark, then yeah, they made it. They made themselves in that top 10 sales best for the year, which is really good. And it shows how well MLB The Show did, and also how well that Days Gone did, because Sekiro was a multi-platform game. Niche game, yes, but I think it showed in its sales that it still had the appeal that for both Days Gone and MLB The Show, for a one publisher and first party games, to make that enough sales to get to those spots, shows that definitely Days Gone should be having a sequel right now. So now it's time for the prediction part of the show. We're going to go to the next month of June, which I'm determined not to miss a game this time around. And like I did last month, there are a couple games that I think can jump in that can really shake things up in the top 10. And I see, obviously, Crash Team Racing is a huge game that is going to shake things up in the top 10. And I see it reigning supreme. And, I see it taking that number 1 spot. Unfortunately, yes, Super Mario Maker is coming out in the month of June, but it is out like the last 2 days of June. And so I don't see it getting enough sales in those last 2 days to make up for all this time Crash Team Racing is able to get for the sales. Especially when also Crash Team Racing is also multi-platform. I see that game getting the number 1 spot in that. I do see Mario Maker getting that number 2 spot, because I think the appeal of Mario Maker is enough, and the Mario brand itself is going to launch itself to the number 2 spot. And, I think it will possibly could jump up to the number 1 spot once we get into the month of July, because it was out on literally we had like 3 days left of the month when the game came out. So I could see itself jumping up to number 1 in July, but at the moment, I think it'll only make the number 2 spot. And the other thing that I think will make a little craziness with this is I think Judgement, the game Judgment, has came out this month as well. And with really good reviews from this game, I think it will make the number 3 spot. And I think Days Gone will be moving down to number 4. I think it's just with the days of play, I think it'll get enough sales to boot itself into the number 4 spot. And I think Mortal Kombat, unfortunately, for being the top selling game for the next 2 months, I think it's going to be at the very bottom of the top 10, if not completely out of the top 10. And you'll see it on my list right down below where I put Mortal Kombat once I look at everything all together. But I also think Total War 3 Kingdoms and Rage 2 will also get out of the top 10. I think those games are one-hit wonders. They're not going to last for multiple months. They're not going to have the holdover like a Days Gone has been having at the moment, or even a Mortal Kombat. But I think Mortal Kombat has taken up all the capacity right now, and that these other games are really going to boot it out. And I think the only thing that's keeping Days Gone potentially where I say in that number 4 spot is I see it there because of the days of play sale that Sony has it, that I think it's enough of a discount, and with the pushback that the Metacritic score is getting by the user score, I think it's going to stay in that top 5 for sure. So it's going to get that number 4 spot. And so what I ask is, what do you see as your top 10 games that is going to be for the MPDs for the month of June? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this content, I have so much more on the channel. Check it out. Give it a like, share it with your friends, and if you want to keep up with everything I release here on the channel, just hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mitch, and I'm signing off saying, see you soon.